All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am Lashika Thomas, the Assistant Director at Campus Rec and the CSU Wellbeing Liaison. And I have with me today our registered dietitian with Airmark, Miss Valerie, and she's going to do some Thanksgiving favorites. So sit back and relax. And throughout, we will have some questions and little things so you can win some prizes. So be prepared to answer in the chat. And if you ever have any questions, just put it in the chat and let me know. Thanks. The floor is yours, Valerie.
Okay, yeah, good morning and welcome. Happy holidays to everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you so much for Lashika for doing all the background work on this, the marketing, putting these Zoom meetings together. Thank you so much. And a big thank you to Columbus State University for sponsoring these events. I'm really appreciative of their support with these health and wellness events. Today, we've got a full pack schedule. We're going to be talking about holiday eating. We're also going to be featuring several traditional holiday recipes, and specifically how to repurpose or reutilize some leftovers. Specifically, we're going to be talking about cranberries and how to use those. We'll also be talking about cornbread stuffing and how to repurpose that or reuse that for leftovers, some creative ways to do that. And the last, actually I'm going to start off with it because it'll be first, is how to use and think about using sweet potato casserole. So those are some favorites that are traditionally eaten during this holiday season, not only for Thanksgiving, but into Christmas as well. So I wanted to put some ideas out there for you to be able to utilize. The first recipe I'm actually going to utilize is a sweet potato casserole, and I'm going to show you how to repurpose that into some sweet potato pancakes that are great for breakfast, although I think they could be eaten at almost any meal whatsoever. So let's get started with that. I'm going to turn the griddle on in back of me and actually try to cook a couple of these if I can while we're part of the recipe demonstration. All right, so let's get started with the sweet potato casserole. You see in back of me, I just have a griddle here, and I'm just going to turn that on a medium heat. And we're actually going to use form the sweet potato pancakes and put them on the griddle. So hopefully we can do that. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about these recipes. First of all, everybody has their own sweet potato casserole that they like to make. And so whatever recipe you have, I think it'll be just perfect for this because it will include the ingredients that you like in it. The spices, cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, whatever it is, raisins that you like to put in it, or craisins. Those are great in a sweet potato casserole. But I wanted to show you what I used for this and why I did this. So I started out with a can of these. This is yams. And if you'll notice, yams and sweet potatoes are almost used interchangeably. However, there are some distinct differences between the two. But sometimes these are actually used interchangeably and this is an example of that. So this actually says yams on the label, but if I actually look at the ingredients, it says sweet potatoes, and this also has water and some cane sugar in it. And these are packed in syrup. I could not find any that were packed in their own juice. I did not use the juice in here. I just poured it off, which is fine. They're going to be a little bit sweet anyway. So if you want to use it, maybe you do incorporate it into your sweet potato recipe and cut down on the sugar, you could do that. But I actually wanted to highlight the differences. So the differences between a sweet potato and a yam. A sweet potato is from the plant family called the morning glory. A sweet potato has a lighter skin, which is this, okay? And I could not find any yams in the store. I would have brought one for you to show you, but like I said, I have canned yams in here, but a yam with a peeling on it is going to look quite different. The yam is related to the lily plant family and has a rougher, darker skin. Yams are much larger and sweeter. So even though this says yams on here, this is actually a sweet potato, which is quite confusing. Anyway, bottom line is either one of them will work well in this recipe. So these came out and they just look like this. They're in the chunks right here. All I did was mash them just with that, okay? You could also use a fork if you don't have one of these. Now, like I said, you're going to have your own sweet potato casserole recipe. So for this, I made my own. So I put yams in here, cinnamon, nutmeg, a little bit of ginger. I used a small amount of brown sugar, not very much at all, and 1 egg. Okay, and then I just mixed it up all together because I wanted it to form sort of like a paste. Now I could bake this, but I chose instead, I knew I was going to be putting them on the griddle, so I did not bake it. So if you're going to bake your casserole like you normally would, because you're going to be using it as a leftover, then follow this recipe because it's going to be, you're going to need to add the ingredients back to it because it probably will be a lot drier than this. But this recipe is quite moist. So I'm going to show you how to make these. So you could actually save some of your casserole before you bake it and for potato pancakes in the morning time, or use the recipe, incorporate the additional ingredients and use it the next day. Okay, so here we go. Right, I'm going to be going back and forth between this griddle and here, so you can see what I'm doing. So the first thing I'm going to do is just, I am going to spray, even though this is a nonstick griddle, I'm going to go ahead and spray it with a little bit of cooking spray. And hopefully you can still hear me with that on, because I don't want it to smoke. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a bit of this. Oh, one more trick. All right, here's a trick I learned yesterday. Spray your hands with this and just rub them around because this is going to be a little bit sticky. I also found out that the smaller you make these, the better they are on the griddle because they're going to be a little bit difficult to turn over. They're going to want to crumble a bit, so just make them about that size. So again, I'm just, because my hands have the cooking oil on them, they don't stick. So that's a good hint. Another one right on there. And I'll do one more. I'm going to let those sit just a couple of minutes on there just to get brown. All right, one more. Okay, you take just wash your hands. Okay, here's another little trick I learned yesterday doing this. Spray the top of these while they're on this because we're going to flip them over. And because they do stick, this will help prevent that. And it will also add a little bit of crispness to the outside, which is what we want. Okay. So I've turned the flame up just a little bit more on that because I want a crispy brown bottom on them. That's what I like. I like that when you bite into it, it's got a little bit of crust on it. Okay, so while that's cooking, if we look at the recipe, you'll see that there's a glaze that goes on top of this, which has yogurt on it. And this is actually very good. Personally, I thought it was a little bit too sweet, so you could cut back on some of the sugar that's in here, or you could add more spice to it. This is a lot of the creative part comes in here. You could also add fruit to this. So it's just yogurt with a little bit of confectioner's sugar. That's the white powdered sugar, also called powdered sugar. A little bit of syrup in here. And you just mix it up. And this will be the topping for those pancakes. Now, I would get creative with this if you just had plain potato casserole here, sweet potato casserole, and even if you do the marshmallows in it, it'll still work. It might be a little bit sticky, but it'll still work. I would add other ingredients to it. Nuts, chia seeds, cranberries, or have people, if you wanted to have people make their own type and put the ingredients out there and everybody can mix together their own little pancakes. This is a really creative way to use this recipe, especially for breakfast. So let's turn those over and see how they're doing. Another trick. spray your cooking utensil. This helps pick them up off the bottom of the pan and turn them over. All right, I'm going to do this in front of you, so hopefully this will work. We're just beginning to brown. We're just beginning to get a little crust on the bottom, like that. Whoop, sliding around. So you'll see how they do crack a little bit here, and that's why you want to be careful with the utensil that you're using and to make them smaller, because they'll be much easier to handle like that. Okay, I think you get the idea with that. It's just doing the same thing over and over again. But the smell coming out of here, I wish you guys were in here. It smells wonderful. It smells like fall to me. So let's see what the finished product looks like and then a garnish on top of it. Okay, so here's some, these cooked about maybe 5 minutes on each side, maybe a little bit less depending on what kind of griddle you're using in that. And then this is the yogurt topping, so it just goes directly on top. I added a little almonds on top for that. And there you go. There's a different way to repurpose or reutilize your sweet potato casserole. So give that a try and see how that works out. All right, we're not finished using leftovers yet. We've got cornbread stuffing to make and show you how to use that. So let me swap out some ingredients and I'll be right back.
All right, well, Valerie is getting ready for our next recipe. Let's see how many of y'all were listening. So for our first quiz question, what are some differences between a sweet potato and a yam? You can put them in the chat. What are some differences between a sweet potato and a yam? All right, we got different color skin. Somebody was listening, I like it. What else? Yams are from the lily family. They have darker skin, they're sweeter texture. Yams are sweet.
Yep.
Yeah, all of those things. Good job. All right, Valerie.
I think the one most surprising one was to realize what plant family they are. And when it was morning glory, I thought, I've seen that plant before. Let me look that up. And you'll notice it as well. It's a really beautiful kind of white lily looking flower, as it says. It's really pretty. It lays, I think it lays on the ground. So, okay. So on to cornbread dressing, which I hope everyone has for Thanksgiving and for the holidays, because it's a delightful dish to have. I think it's one of the best treats for this. And I make it year round. I don't stick to it because I really love it. So I wanted to show you what I did with this recipe, and I think I'm missing one thing. Hold on just a second. All right. Okay, we're gonna need this. Again, this is the cornbread dressing is just like a green bean casserole. Everybody has their own favorite version for this, and cornbread dressing is no different at all from that. So here's what I did. I used this because I wanted to use it in several different ways. This is quite good. I'm sure there are others out there that are just as good. I happen to like this one a lot. And the recipe on the back was fairly simple to follow, very straightforward, and I did not alter it. Now, if you look on the back of this, you're going to see, well, Valerie, it uses butter in it. And yes, it does use butter in it because it's delicious. And this is a holiday treat for me. This is not something that I do all the time. I don't use a lot of butter in cooking. I use more canola oil, olive oil. I try to be heart healthy myself. But part of holiday eating is to enjoy the recipes. And so I did use real butter in here, and it's a delightful dressing. The only thing I did is I cut down on the sodium a bit. I bought a low sodium chicken broth just because these products do have a lot of salt in them, and that's something I can cut down on and I won't miss it, especially if you're going to be adding something like gravy. to cornbread dressing, you're going to get additional salt in there. So that was the only modification that I made. So this recipe calls for, and I made the entire package because I was going to use it in 2 different ways. So this calls for 4 tablespoons of butter, 1 cup of celery, 1 cup of onion, and 2 cups of chicken broth. And I made it right on the stove top yesterday. Now, if you're making this dressing and you're going to bake it and utilize it, then you'll want to follow the instructions on this recipe for this eggs in a basket. Follow those instructions for rehydrating this recipe because you're going to need that. Once you bake it, it becomes a lot drier, so it won't work as well. But in this instance, I did not bake it. I'm using the dressing just as I had it on the stovetop yesterday, and I'm going to show you this. This is a really neat trick. This actually originates from Scotch eggs, which were an invention by it's a large shopping store called Fortnum and Mason. It's in England. So, and I think this originated around 1738. So this is a very, very old type recipe. The original Scotch egg was an egg that was surrounded with sausage and breadcrumbs and then fried. So if you can imagine how good that actually is for a Scottish breakfast. This is a little bit lighter version than that. We're actually going to be using the cornbread dressing to mold a cup within a muffin cup, and we're going to place the egg on top of that and then bake it. So let's get started. Okay, so as I mentioned, I just made the stuffing myself on the stovetop, and this is it right here. And this is simple. All I have is eggs with me. I have a muffin cup like this, and I'm actually going to spray this with the cooking spray. Just like that. This makes it easier to handle. So keep that cooking spray around because you're going to need it again for this recipe. We're simply going to take the cornbread and we're going to mold it into this, make a little cup. If you did not have this, you could use an oven-safe ramekin to put inside the oven because we're going to pop an egg inside that. So you want an oven-safe glass bowl or a ramekin to make sure that it's oven-safe, oven-proof before you do this. Okay. Now, I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. I'm going to spray my hands with a little bit of cooking spray to make this much easier to handle. I'm simply going to take about that much, maybe just a little bit, tad more. And I'm going to place it and press it right into this cup. Just like that. So if you like to play with dough, this will be your thing. I'm going to grab a little bit more. Move it this way so you guys can see. I'm just going to make a cup. Press all the way around the edges just to seal it in there. Make sure you press some in the bottom so your egg doesn't leak out. All right, let's grab another one. I'm just going to press it again with the egg. And press it again with the cornbread against the muffin tin to ensure we've got a safe place for our egg to go. And this cornbread stuffing is really moist. So it fits very well into these, and it's just going to bake. All right, I think you get the idea with that. So let me wash my hands and I'll show you the rest. Okay, from this point, we're just going to crack an egg and drop it directly in there, just like that. Okay. So that's it. Pop it in the oven at 350. It took a little bit longer cooking time than these directions say, but everybody's oven is a little bit different. 10 to 12 minutes is probably close, but I'll show you what they look like so you can tell when they're done in here. So that just goes directly in the oven like that. Bring those over. And I think this is a fabulous way to use cornbread. I would have never thought about this if I hadn't been doing some research on the internet to figure out some creative ways to use this. So this is what they look like. You can see the whites will form around like that. The yellow is firm, and that's when you know that they're done. Okay, now the trick to this is getting them out of here, which was a bit of a trick. So it actually became easier as they cool, but you don't want to wait till they cool because you want to eat them while they're hot. So just take a spoon and very gently lift them out and have your plate very close when you do that, because it's a little bit difficult to get out, but if you do it carefully, they'll come out really well. Okay, and then this is the final product. It says to have them with hot sauce, which I love. Actually, eggs and hot sauce, and hot sauce and cornbread is actually very good as well. So that's another way to use leftover cornbread. I think it's a great way for breakfast. I would have never thought. So I hope you'll enjoy that and give your own spin on how to enjoy cornbread dressing. All right, it's time for us to switch over to reutilizing cornbread in another recipe along with leftover turkey. So let me switch out ingredients and I'll be right back.
All right, so I don't know about y'all, but wow, I never thought to use cornbread in that way, cornbread dressing. And I'm like Valerie, we don't have to wait to Thanksgiving or Christmas to have cornbread dressing. Like, yummy. So how many of y'all are going to be trying that recipe? I know I'm definitely egg. So our next quiz question, what is a Scottish egg? What is a Scottish egg? Yes, Maria. Yeah, we're going to try this cornbread thing. I'm on board. Anybody know what a Scottish egg? Got some responses coming in.
Everyone has Google, so if you didn't catch it.
I know. It's sausage, breadcrumbs, and fried. Christy, that's correct. I like how short and sweet that was. This is a sausage, breadcrumbs, and fried. Let's put it together and let's eat it. Sounds awesome.
Yep.
All right. Valerie, I think she's ready to go.
Okay.
Back over to you.
Yeah, so let's talk about how to use, there are two more ingredients here. We're going to talk about how to use more of the cornbread dressing that we've just talked about or not prepared. And then we always have leftover turkey. So we're trying to figure out how to incorporate ways for leftover turkey. And I thought this one was quite unique and a little bit plant forward, which is also nice, especially around the holidays when we tend to center around a lot of the meat. So that's traditional foods for us. But if you were a pilgrim eating that, you probably may not have had turkey. Actually, you might have had something like a goose or a duck or venison, which is deer. Those were the traditional items, meats that the pilgrims were eating back then. And they certainly weren't eating grandma's cornbread casserole or green bean casserole. They would have had a corn dish, but probably more like maybe like a mush that they would make with the ground corn. Okay, but fortunately, today we're not going to have any mush. We are going to be using a little bit more plant forward. So this is leftover turkey and stuffing stuffing it in peppers, which is a really colorful dish as well. Very easy to make. We're going to start off with the same cornbread stuffing that I've used here. And again, if you're using this and you've already baked it, then follow the recipe along with this to be able to rehydrate that cornbread stuffing. I did not add anything else to it. Again, this is a cornbread stuffing that I made yesterday right on the stove top, right out of that mix that I talked about earlier. Okay, we're gonna have to do a little prep for this recipe. So these green peppers, or peppers if you will, all different shades and varieties. And the only one I don't have here, I think, is an orange one. So use these. This is a great color way to get all your colors in for your vegetables. They're beautiful fall vegetables as well. And there are two ways to actually cut these. One of them is just to cut the top off. Just like that. Don't throw this away, okay? Trim this off and use this. A lot of people discard this whole top, and there's a lot of really good product in here. So I would not throw that away. I would save that, put it in a baggie, put it in my refrigerator, and throw it into a soup or a stew, or you could actually chop it up and use it in this as well. But don't throw those tops away. Now, here's something you can throw away, all right? It's the inside here. I'm just gonna pull out my garbage can. So the way I do this is I just put my hand in it and pull it out. It'll come, it just comes out like that, okay? And if you want to take out a little bit more of the white flesh that's in there, you can. All right, and I bump it a few times and get out all the seeds. There you go. You've got a hole, all right? The other way to do this is, if you wanted to serve it in another way, is to, again, cut the top off and save that. I'm going to extract the insides. I'm just going to reach in. Most of it will just come off in one great big lump like that. I actually think you can do something with those seeds. I've read something on it, but I have not tried it yet, but I think you can actually germinate these seeds. That's another project. All right, I'm going to give that a little pop like that. And then actually, I'm just going to cut it this way. So you can use these peppers in two different ways. If you wanted to present them like this, you could take a little bit of that flesh out. Just like that. Or you could use it stand up like that. Regardless of whichever you did, either one will be fine, and they'll cook just about the same. Okay, so here's what we're going to do with those. I'm just going to, this is the leftover turkey right here. Just going to put that right into a bowl. This is cooked turkey. Okay. A little bit of pepper. 1 beaten egg. I'll just whip that up really quickly. Put that all together in there. Then I'm going to add the stuffing. You could add other spices to it if you wanted to. Oregano would be really good in here. If you wanted to change the flavor of it completely, add some taco seasoning to it, and you'll get some spicy Mexican-inspired leftovers. This calls for parsley. I'm going to add it right in here to the dish. You could pop it on top if you wanted to, but I like it inside the dish. You could also use cilantro in here. You could use scallions would be very nice. All right, and we're just going to mix that together. This also smells really good as well. The fresh turkey coming out of here is wonderful. Stuffed peppers are a dish where you can be very creative with these. If you wanted to add a white bean, I think that would be a great addition. The cannellini beans would be good. An Italian white bean would be really nice with this. And maybe you have some of those left over. You could incorporate those. And this is a dish where I did not add any salt to it. You saw I added pepper to it because the turkey had salt in it already, and the cornbread stuffing had some in there from the manufacturer. I did not add any additional salt to this. All right. So from this point, all we do is take the stuffing, pop it in here. I'm going to use a little bit smaller spoon. And just top it off. I think this is a great way to use this because you actually have one whole complete meal right in a little cup, which is, to me, is excellent. Maybe a side leftover biscuit or a piece of cornbread with it, which I'm sure you're going to have left over, would be good. Okay, fill it like that. For the other half, if you wanted to use the tomato, the pepper half, just like that. And the recipe calls for a little sprinkling of mozzarella cheese on top. And there you go. You just place these in a baking dish and bake them for about 25 minutes. You want maybe touch this with the fork and see how tender it is. If you like it crunchy, take it out of the oven. Again, we're using a cooked turkey in this, so we don't have to worry about, if you just want it warm, that's fine to eat it like that. So here's a great little dish to have for you, and I'll show you what the finished product looks like. Okay, there you go. What a beautiful dish. Lovely colors. I think the colors in this are just fabulous, especially for fall. What can beat red, yellow, and green? And you could throw an orange one in there as well. So after you bake them, even if you wanted to bake them like this, you could actually cut them in half and serve them in halves if you wanted to do that. One of the things that you might want to think about, this actually will shrink a little bit. See that? That's cooked. If it looks like they're drying out too much, in the bottom of your baking pan, just add a little bit of water in that. It'll help bring some moisture up into the product. So just gauge it while you're cooking it and see what you think. But anyway, so those are your leftover turkey and stuffing peppers. So we've got another recipe to go, and that's the cranberry relish. And I think you're really going to enjoy this. This is such a fun dish to make. So I'm going to swap out ingredients and we'll get started with that one.
All right, thanks, Valerie. Okay, so in the chat, Ria said, love how creative this is. Great way to use leftovers. Exactly. Instead of just making a turkey sandwich, right? Why not make a stuffed bell pepper? I'm loving this. All right, so our next quiz question. Name one meat the pilgrims most likely ate at their Thanksgiving meal. And if you're really tricky, go ahead and name all three. Possibility of all three. All right, we got some responses coming in into the chat. Duck and venison. There's one more. Does anybody know what that one was?
So we've got two poultries and a lamb and a four-legged, well, that four-legged animal.
Goose. You got it. Thanks, Ria. All right. Just to make sure, Lauren was able to upload the recipes for me. I was unable to do it on my end, so she was able to get those in the chat. So all those recipes are there, so please download them and have them handy when you're cooking that Thanksgiving meal to be like, this is what we're going to do with those leftovers. All right, Valerie.
Well, that's a great lead in, because I'm going to stop for just a second. And I want you to sort of think about how you're going to manage the holiday season. Sometimes it's really stressful. There are so many foods offered. We tend to overeat. We're not quite sure why we did that or how we could avoid doing that. So as I'm preparing these recipes, think about that. Well, what stresses you out over the holidays in the eating category, and how can I help you with that? So a lot of mindful techniques will get you through the holidays, thinking about how hungry am I when I sit down for this meal. You certainly want to enjoy the meal. This doesn't come around all that often, so take pleasure in the food. That's what it's there for. Some other techniques you might want to think about are when have that 9-inch plate in front of you, which is a standard 9-inch plate. Think about filling about 3/4 of that with fruits and vegetables. Go fill it up with salads or all the vegetable parts, and about 1/4 of that, 25% of that, with the protein-based products. So that might help quite a bit. Remember, the deeper, the darker the fruit and or the vegetable, the more powerful you're going to have for antioxidants and nutrients in them. So keep that in mind as well. Something else you might want to think about is not skipping the meal because you think you're going to have a larger lunch. So mindful eating practices, and we know the research substantiates that if you skip a meal, you will overeat at the next meal. So have some breakfast, and if it's going to be a meal that's going to be 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, plan for a light snack before that, and then have your meal and enjoy it. It's always a good idea to test how thirsty you are in your fluid level before you sit down to a meal, because we also know that thirst sometimes is masked as hunger pains. So identify whether you're really thirsty or whether you're really hungry. So have something to drink. If the feeling of not being hungry goes away, then you know it was thirst related. If you still feel that feeling of hunger, then you know that it's time to eat something. So those are just a few hints for you to help you through the holidays. You also want to remain active. Get up after the meal, go walk, get away from the table, move around, engage yourselves in some other activities. So, now, our third recipe here we're going to be talking about are cranberries, these little red jewels that are packed with vitamin C and fiber and teeming with antioxidants. These colors, you can't get any deeper, darker than this. This is an absolute fabulous fruit, and it's sort of a hidden jewel, if you will. We don't think about these except for around Christmas and Thanksgiving, but they're available all season long. They're certainly, you can buy them frozen and they're great to eat. You can do all kinds of things with them. I've made pancakes with them. I've made desserts with them. And what's funny about these little fruits is that they explode. And I did not know that until I started cooking with them actually on the stove. So this is quite fun. It's sort of like popcorn when it cooks. Okay, so we're going to make our own cranberry relish here, and then I'm going to show you another way to use it. Now, a safety hint, these do pop, and the skins are going to explode, and the juices are going to come out, and the fiber will also come out, and that will actually thicken this to make it sort of a cranberry sauce. So use a pan that's deep so that these have an ability to pop up. They don't splatter out of the pan unless you use something very shallow, but try this. That's why I have this deep pan here. Simple recipe to follow. Okay, one of the first things we're going to need to do ahead of time, let me put this like this so you can see it, is we're going to need about a half a cup of fresh orange juice. So I just have a regular orange here. This is actually, I think it's a navel orange. I think this is actually seedless. So I'm just going to cut the orange and then squeeze the juice out of it. Okay. Before I squeeze this, I want to do something else to it. I'm going to need orange zest from this, and I'm just going to take this zester and I'm going to rake it down the skin, and that's going to be the orange zest that we're going to use inside of this recipe. You can also do this with a grater, but I happen to like this tool. It just has 3 or 4 little holes on the top of it, and it is sharp. And I'm just going to take it, run it down the outside of the orange peel, and it just makes these little curls. They're quite nice. So I'm going to save some of those. We'll put that directly into our cranberry mixture here. What I'm actually peeling off here is the skin, but what's actually coming up is the aroma, those polyphenols and those phytonutrients that I talked about that give plants their color and their odor and their flavor, is the oil. This is citric acid coming through here, but there's also citrus oil, and that's what you smell being released from here. A little trick if you want to try something fun, an adult fun. So take this and half it. Be careful with this. Is actually better done outside. Squeeze this and it'll pop really pretty colors, and that's the oil coming out of the skin into the fire, and it also smells like a citrus, so it's a good thing to do around the campfire. All right, I'm going to save a few of those. Just going to go ahead and put that right in the pot. that peel there. And I'm going to just poke this a little bit just to get some of the juice flowing right out of there. You could, if you don't have this, you could use orange juice. That's fine to use. I just like using the fresh. Since I had the fresh oranges, I wanted to use them. And these have quite a bit of juice in them. If some of the pulp comes in, it's perfectly fine. You don't need to strain it out. And you know, I like to use a lot of the foods. I don't throw much away. I don't throw these away. I actually cut them into quarters or little chunks of pieces, and I put them in my water bottle so that I have flavored water in there. So don't throw these away. There's another use for them. All right, let's continue with this. You'll see me sticking the knife in here and twirling it around a little bit. And that just allows the juice to flow down into the bowl. I'm not really digging around. It just follows the knife contour down into the bowl, makes it a little bit easier. All right. And from here, we just add things directly into the pan. So I'm going to add the cranberries directly in there. This is a little bit of grated ginger. That will also add a nice zest to it. I'm going to add a couple of cinnamon sticks. Just pop those in. A little bit of water. Some maple syrup. You could use honey in here if you wanted to. You could use light pancake syrup. This just happens to be maple syrup. And the orange juice. And I'm just going to give that a little bit of a shake around. And that's what you have. And you just put it on the stove for about 15 or 20 minutes. These will pop, so you hear the sound. It's quite nice to actually hear it. These berries are going to explode. They'll release the fiber and the starch into this product. Along with the maple syrup in here, it will become a little bit thicker than that, and that's what you want. If you want these cranberries to be really mushy, then just increase the length of the time that you cook it. Keep it on low, though, after you do that, because it will boil away if you don't. So you need to keep an eye on it and keep it stirred. But the smell coming out of this is also great. It's really refreshing. It sort of smells like a cranberry cinnamon candle, something coming out of here. It's very nice. So let me show you the finished product. Okay, here's the cranberry sauce, and as you can see, it has thickened, and it will thicken overnight, especially if you make it a couple of hours ahead of time. You'll see it begin to thicken a little bit. All right, and there are several things you could do with this. So, of course, putting it on the turkey is fine. Chicken, it goes great with chicken. It also goes great with pork if you've never tried that before. But I would also use this as a topping for breakfast as well. And I would just simply put it right on top of the pancakes or the waffles that you have and use it as a topping that way. You might want to add, if you wanted it a little bit sweeter, you could add a little bit more maple syrup to this if you wanted to do that. But it also is very good on biscuits. These cranberries are tart and the cinnamon lingers in it, and it's a great topping for toasted biscuits as well. So think about that as another way to use your cranberry sauce. Something else that you might want to consider is actually mixing this into a hot cereal like oatmeal, which gives a tangy sweetness to the oatmeal. And I know you could even add craisins along with that if you wanted to add it even more. So think about that as another way to use your cranberry sauce. This is actually a lighter calorie cranberry sauce, and it's not a gel, not a jellied cranberry sauce, but a loose, fresh cranberry sauce. It also makes an excellent gift to give away during the Christmas time. Put it in a clear jar with a ribbon around it, and it's a beautiful presentation. So that's your cranberry relish. Any questions for me?
Do we have any questions from Valerie? You feel free to unmute yourself if you would like. Ask her like any questions about what she just did, or if you have some thoughts on some other ideas on Thanksgiving stuff that you want help with leftovers, she might be able to help you out with that too.
Yeah, I'd love to hear some of your favorite recipes or any recipes that you'd like some modifications on that maybe I can help with.
Maria just says, I love all these ideas. Now she's hungry.
Me too. It's getting to be about lunchtime.
Yeah. Anybody with their favorite recipes for Thanksgiving? What are you looking forward to cooking or eating?
Eating, yes, cooking. There's so many great foods around this season. It's a fantastic time. Try out recipes, be creative, share recipes. That's always fun.
I'm looking forward to sweet potato pie.
Oh man, that's
Yeah,
great.
but I've never made one. So do you have any ideas, any suggestion?
Yeah, so you could almost use the same the same ingredients that you use for the sweet potato casserole. When you come up to a pie filling, you want to add probably a little bit more moisture to it. So I might increase the eggs a little bit in that. It certainly is a way to use that. You may also add a little bit of cream or milk, or you could use a plant-based milk like almond milk. So you want it a little bit more loose to be able to bake inside of the shell. For the shell, you could either use a regular pie crust if you wanted to. You could use a graham cracker crust. That would make it a little bit different. You could also bake it into, use that same type of crust, if you will, that I just used in these muffin tins or muffin cups, and pour the pie filling into those and make individual tarts. That's always fun. Those are easy.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Enjoy. All right, everybody must be really hungry.
Yeah. Our favorite is homemade mac and cheese.
Oh gosh, can't beat that.
Yeah.
That's a great dish also. It freezes really well, and that's a versatile dish. You could do lots of different things with that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, y'all have the recipes. We'll appreciate all y'all for joining us this month. We will have a one in December, so invite your colleagues to join us. And we just really appreciate Valerie getting all these and testing all these recipes out. Y'all just understand she spends hours perfecting this and making sure that it is right and testing.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So we really appreciate you, and we thank all of y'all for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy holiday.
Okay, don't forget to wash your hands. Stay safe.